I sincerely believe that Salesforce is the hottest industry of our lifetimes. It's practically a mandatory tool for every company out there. And unlike other hot technologies like AI, for example, Salesforce is something the average person has just never heard about. It's the best kept industry secret of our lifetimes. And thus, supply and demand is broken, and you have some Salesforce professionals making 400 grand a year as a result. But that doesn't answer the question we're asking today. The question is, today, in 2020, should you still join the Salesforce industry, or have you missed the boat? My name is David, and I've been in the Salesforce industry for over 10 years now, 7 of them building out Salesforce tools for Google. I've been on the board of a Salesforce recruiting company. Salesforce gave me their coveted Salesforce MVP award 6 times. They made me a recipient of the very rare Golden Hoodie Award as well. I hold practically every Salesforce certification, and I've been blogging about Salesforce for the past 7 years on my website, sfdc99.com. Basically, I'm the biggest Salesforce nerd you're ever going to meet. And this is my honest opinion on the matter. Should you jump into the Salesforce industry in the year 2020? The short answer is yes. But, and there are some big buts I want to talk about here, no pun intended. First of all, let me explain to you the Salesforce situation we're in 2020. Every company nowadays uses Salesforce or will use Salesforce soon. If you don't know what Salesforce is, it's basically a souped up Excel spreadsheet. Every company uses Excel, and every company at some point will outgrow it. At that point, they buy Salesforce. Now, I've been geeking out over Salesforce for the past 10 years now, and I still don't know who second place is in the industry. That tells you everything you need to know about how dominant Salesforce is today. So that's the demand side. How about the supply side? Now, the supply side is what makes Salesforce so interesting, right? No one goes to college and dreams about becoming a Salesforce professional. They dream about learning to code, learning AI, really everything but Salesforce. In fact, I'm shocked if any college grad has even heard of Salesforce. My parents, who love me dearly and know that I've obsessed over this technology for the past 10 years, they have no idea what Salesforce is, even though the license plate on my car says Salesforce. So there you have it. The average person doesn't know Salesforce, and really, they don't care. And they shouldn't, to be honest. Salesforce is kind of boring. It's a tool built specifically for companies. It's not something that the average person is going to bust out their phone, and download the Salesforce app. But you know what's not boring about Salesforce? Making $150K per year. There's nothing boring about that. I can think of a lot of BS I'd put up with for $150K per year. In fact, there are a plethora of Salesforce professionals making upwards of $300K to $400K per year. I'm not talking about CEOs here. I'm talking about average rank and file employee grunts like you and me who just sit at their desks all day and have no major responsibilities but just build out tools in Salesforce. Then they go home and drive home in their Tesla Model X's while their colleagues wonder how the heck they afford such things. There's really nothing boring about that. And that's what makes Salesforce so special. Back to the original question though. Should you, someone not already in the Salesforce industry, join this industry and buy Tesla? Yes, but the big but in front of us is that Salesforce is no longer in the hyper-growth phase of its life cycle. Now, every company follows a path with a rise and a fall. Even great titan companies like Apple will one day fall. Check out this graph. There are 4 phases in the company circle of life. Phase 1, hypergrowth, then steady growth, then decline, then death. Now, if I were to use social media platforms as an analogy for companies in each of these phases, I'd say phase 1 hypergrowth is currently TikTok. Phase 2, Instagram. Phase 3, Facebook. And phase 4, MySpace. Phase 1 is the best time to jump into something. If you haven't already created a TikTok account, go do so right now. All the cool kids are doing it. If you jump into something in phase 2, it's like, where have you been? Get with the program. Phase 3, don't bother jumping in. You already missed the boat. And phase 4, it's like, wow, you must really enjoy pain or something. Salesforce today is currently in phase 2, but I believe Salesforce just recently entered phase 2, and I really think it's going to be a long phase 2 because I cannot see companies just up and dropping their Salesforce investment in any reasonable time frame. But the truth is, the best time to join the Salesforce industry was a few years ago. That's not to say that you can't still make $150K a year doing Salesforce. You're just going to have a lot more competition ahead of you. Gone are the days where you can just walk into a company wearing some Salesforce t-shirt and just have them throw money at you. Speaking of competition, here's what you're up against. About half the people I meet at Dreamforce, the annual Salesforce conference, are just getting started on their Salesforce journeys. There are programs popping up everywhere that teach people Salesforce for free. Programs like Salesforce Pathfinder, JVS, Merivis, PepUp Tech, Trailblazer Connect. The list goes on and on and on. Now, if you are already part of one of these programs, well, consider yourself lucky. You're getting fast-tracked into the Salesforce industry. But if you are not, well, that means there is a sudden influx of supply in the industry, which means more competition for you and softer salaries. For the first time ever, people are telling me they're having trouble landing their first job in Salesforce. And that's the state of the union for Salesforce in the year 2020. Supply is finally catching up with fanatical demand. So if I was a college student graduating today, knowing what I know, would the Salesforce industry be my first choice to plant the roots of my career in? Honestly, probably not. No phase 2 technology would make the cut. I would probably want to gamble on some phase 1 technology in hypergrowth instead. But for the rest of us, mid-career, who just need to find some well-established industry that'll give us a good life with enough runway to last most, if not the rest of our careers, would I recommend jumping into Salesforce? Yes, but only under these 2 conditions. Condition number 1, you learn Salesforce with Godspeed. You go all in on your Salesforce training. Now we know that Salesforce is here to stay. That's a fact. But every day your competition grows. And if you're just out and about dilly-dallying, well, phase 2 just became phase 3, and you just missed the boat big time on your career. I'll have a link in the description below with my recommended resources on how to learn Salesforce. Check it out. Condition number 2, consider learning some code. Now there are 2 main tracks in the Salesforce industry. There's the admin path, people who strictly do not write any code, and the developer path, people on a spectrum who either sometimes write code or write code most of the time in Salesforce. Admins are the ones these days struggling to find jobs. For Salesforce developers, the job market in 2020 is still basically a phase 1 job market. Demand is at peak levels and supply is not catching up. This is true even for hybrid Salesforce admins/developers who maybe aren't great coders, but they're also not afraid to try coding sometimes too. A lot of people will hear the word code and their brain will just automatically shut off. But what you don't know is that coding in Salesforce is about 100 times easier than coding anywhere else. You don't need to know algorithms or things like how to reverse a linked list, which, by the way, I don't even really know what that means. All you're doing in Salesforce when you code is automating small, simple business processes. That's it. Nothing fancy. I personally became a Salesforce developer even though I majored in marketing and I didn't know how to write a single line of code post-college. In fact, this sort of thing is extremely common in the industry. I'd say half of the Salesforce developers in the world have no formal coding training. Heck, I've met men and women in their 50s and 60s who have transitioned from completely different industries and taught themselves how to code in Salesforce. I'll put a link in the description below with my recommended resources on how to learn to code if that's interesting to you. I'll also post a link to some success stories to give you that extra bit of motivation on your journey. Alright, that's my take on the Salesforce industry today. I hope you found it interesting. If so, give me a like, give me a subscribe, or heck, just give me a shout out in the comments below. I'm really curious to see what you guys think here. This is David, and I am signing out. To all you Salesforce dreamers out there, the dream is still alive. And if I could do it, so can you. Godspeed, and I'll see you next time.